Trigger warning, folks, today we are talking about the Woody Allen documentary. So at the beginning of our show, you might want to skip ahead.
How many times must you be told? There's nowhere that we don't go.
She's got good practice. What's a beautiful girl like you would race in a place like this? Winning?
Hi there, folks.
This is Amanda.
And this is Rita.
And
you're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast about women and some other folks that you've probably never heard of, but you should have.
and today you will.
Alrighty.
So I got the shot. Yay!
Yay!
I got the first shot of the vaccine on Friday afternoon. It is now Sunday afternoon, and I've been having some side effects since I got it. It's the first shot, which I think most people don't have side effects on the first shot. They usually have them on the second. But it's like, I think it just varies by person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been, manageable. But I would say that it's been unpleasant.
Yeah.
Just some fevers, body aches and headache, some nausea, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Very
Worth
gross
it, though?
sweating.
Worth it?
Oh, yeah. Anything is worth not dying,
Yeah.
Like, can I put up with this for 48 hours? For sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it pales in comparison to the 6 weeks I was sick when I had
True.
COVID.
It's like the scales. 6 weeks, 3 days.
Yeah, and I was actually sicker than 6 weeks. I was hella sick for 4 weeks, and then moderately sick for two, and then mildly sick for probably 2 or 3 after that. Because I was still like hacking up a lung coughing until the first week of January, and
Oof.
I got sick on Halloween weekend.
Oof. That's right.
Yep.
Because that's when I got it. Yeah.
So, it was real fun. So I would definitely say that you should get your shot, and it shouldn't matter which one. Just get it done. If you can get it done, get it done. And I know that there are some folks who are like, well, I'm not eligible yet. One cool thing you should think about doing is calling up wherever you want to get the vaccine and get put on their waiting list.
Okay.
Because what will happen is at the end of the day, like let's say somebody doesn't show up for their appointment and they've got extra doses. The ones of the Moderna and Pfizer, they have to get them into an arm or they have to throw them away. So if you're on a waiting list, they'll call you and they'll say, can you be here in 30 minutes? And if you can get there, they'll put that in your arm because they need to get it they need to get out right now.
That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I highly recommend doing that if you haven't done it for yourself.
Question for you. So even after the vaccine, do you think you will still wear a mask?
Yes. For most things.
Mm-hmm.
Until there's like a large majority of people who are vaccinated. Because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious. So people that have been vaccinated, I've been asking, and pretty much 100%, everyone's like, oh yeah, still going to wear it.
Well, I think the people who are getting vaccinated are the ones who believe in science.
Gasp.
And the scientists are saying, like, you should wear the mask until we have reached the capacity of either herd immunity or vaccination, because, like, you can still, until everybody is vaccinated, it's still going to be traveling around the community.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And it is, the vaccines, the Moderna and Pfizer are both like 97 and 98% effective, meaning that they're 97% effective against contracting the virus altogether. But that's still 2 to 3% who get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a room of 100 people, 2 to 3 people could be passing it around.
Oof.
If everyone in the room was vaccinated. So now if we're looking at only 40% of the people in the room are vaccinated and 2 to 3 of them have COVID, like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We're looking at then more people who are going to have COVID. So it's just a good idea until we're at that threshold to wear
take some
our
time.
masks. Yep. Well, I mean, if the Biden administration keeps going as it's been going, then their hope is to get a shot into the arm of every American adult by the end of May. And then we could have like a normal summer.
Fingers crossed.
So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is kind of a subject that is hard for me to discuss, and that's the Woody Allen documentary. Have you watched any of it?
I haven't. I did see that the New York Times wrote an article, and so I do know that it's out, but I'm not quite sure what exactly it all entails.
It's called Allen versus Pharaoh. And so it really... So, I mean, I've only watched the first 2 episodes. I believe the first 2. And then there are 2 more that are coming out. And it really lays out, like, how did these 2 people become a romantic relationship? What was Mia's whole thing? Because she's a little different. She had, like, 6 children before she met him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little, like, just some odd things about it. And then they get together and whatnot. But I think the thing that is difficult for me is that I'm a sexual abuse survivor from childhood as well. And mine was also from a stepfather. So, and actually, he's not her stepfather, but her adoptive father.
Yes.
It's really difficult to be a child and have that be something that impacts your life. And I'm interested to see where they're going to take it. And, you know, this particular story has been talked about and written about since the moment it hit the newspapers, when it was, like, in the 80s? Maybe? Yeah, 80s.
Yeah.
So it's been around for a long time, and people have been and continue to be very critical of Mia Farrow and saying that she had coerced this child into saying these lies in order to get Woody Allen's money or some shit.
Yeah, or back at him because he ended up marrying her daughter. Soon-Yi. Their daughter, yeah.
Yeah, I would also say that it's really weird to me that people decide that the defense of Woody Allen not having sexually molested his daughter is by sexually molesting a daughter. Like, how is that your actual defense? Like, that's your defense?
Yeah.
Is that, he couldn't have been sexually molesting this daughter because he was molesting this daughter and coercing her. Like, what?
That doesn't make any sense. No.
It is such a very weird situation, and I think people will bend over backwards to protect men and to paint girls and women as the enemy. And I had just come off of listening to NPR's incredible podcast about the Larry Nassar gymnastics doctor situation.
Speaking of cover up.
And it's called Believed. And I think that's the thing about both of these stories that they have in common, that are, one, validating of my experience, but at the same time traumatic and triggering. And that's that in all of those cases, and including my own, no one's believed. We want to believe men over mountains of evidence.
Yeah.
Of their wrongdoing.
And that, to me, it's so infuriating. One case that has been really pissing me off is the Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood. And he terrorized her and abused her and raped her. He started grooming her when she was a teenager. Like, he was in his 30s. And she was 16 years old when he started to go after her. And then, yeah, she's 18 and they're dating, but she's 18 and he's in his 30s.
Yeah.
And he's a huge star. You know, she also was successful, but she did not have the pull that he had. And so finally being brave enough to come out and say something, people are just like, oh, she's a jaded little girl.
Yeah, or she's after something.
Yeah.
What do you think anybody is ever after when they come forward with a sexual misconduct? What are we going to get out of it?
She's being raked through the mud right now. You think that was her goal?
Well, I mean, what Rose McGowan went through when she came forward about Harvey Weinstein. I mean, all of these women who have come forward about someone's misconduct have themselves had their lives turned upside down and exposed. And, you know, when it comes to smaller allegations against non-powerful people, those same tactics get used. Like, people decided I wasn't trustworthy, that I had not told the truth. And what I got out of it was attention. That's what they said. That I wanted attention. For what? Why would anybody want that kind of attention?
That kind of attention.
No one wants to be treated like shit.
And also, nobody wants to admit that happened.
I know the amount of shame and, just you feel like you're garbage. Like no one will ever want you. You're tainted.
Yeah.
And why would you want people to know that? Like, that's not what we want. Everybody then looks at you a certain way.
And then they know. And
Yeah.
they know. That's the hardest part, is like when other people look at you and they know.
It is very difficult to fathom for me how whole systems are set up to protect powerful men. Whether they're powerful in the ways that Harvey Weinstein and Woody Allen are, or if they're powerful in the ways that
Political or
fathers,
pillars of the community,
doctors,
things like that.
yeah, lawyers,
Pastors, teachers, coaches.
We just want to believe that they're good people, more so than these girls and women who come forward. It's really upsetting to me, but I've been trying to decide lately if it's a good idea for me to continue to read, watch, listen to these stories, or if I should not do that.
That would be, I would say, up to you. There are some things sometimes that I know I have to turn it off, or I have to put it down and take a minute. Sometimes I don't always finish, or if I do, then I have it rolling around in my head, and it's taken up space that I don't want it to have.
Yeah, and power. And when I say something can be triggering, I really mean it. Like, listening to the Larry Nassar podcast, which again is called Believed, I would highly recommend it, but take care of yourself. There's one girl's story in particular that was very close to my own experience, and having her family not believe her and treat her like shit. Oh, that one.
Gut-wrenching.
That one, I couldn't sleep for days. And I was just really withdrawn from everyone and mad. I was fucking angry. Like, I didn't even realize it until after the fact that those like 5 or 6 days that I had been feeling like that, just like angry at the world, angry at everything, not being able to sleep, pissed off. I didn't even want like Abby to touch me. I was just like, get away from me, leave me alone, back off. It wasn't until after I had stopped feeling that way that I understood, oh,
I get it.
Oh, I was like super triggered by that. And I fancy myself the kind of person who doesn't get easily triggered. And I think I'm not, honestly. But I also think that, like, I don't always know when something's going. I think I don't have that problem.
I think I mentioned to you, I had a weird day of anxiety where my anxiety was on 10. And like when I was like super flinchy and I was scared. I was really scared of stuff.
Yeah. Wasn't that the day you like something happened in the car?
Yeah. And so I told my therapist on Thursday, and so she's like, well, you tell me about your week and tell me about this and what you've been watching on TV and what you've been reading. And that we went through stuff. And she's like, do you realize that you watched this and you saw this and then that incident happened with your family and the next day you were triggered? And I was like, oh. So she's like, you need to document this so that you don't do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I have always been the kind of person who wants to listen to and read and watch these kinds of stories because I feel like it's really important to bear witness to people's pain, and to validate that their feelings and their experiences were real. And I still believe that is a noble virtue to want to have. I think I need to be better about being like, I don't need to watch that. I don't need to read that. And I'm still on the fence about the Woody Allen, Mia Farrow one, and Dylan Farrow, because I know that the next episode, which I haven't watched yet, is her mother videotaping her telling the story of what happened when she was like 10, 9 or 10 when she tells this story. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to watch that. I don't think that's a good idea for me.
Yeah. I think you recognize that.
Because I told that same story when I was 12.
I think you would be ruined for...
I think it would be really hard.
Yeah.
I don't think I should watch it.
I don't think so
But
either.
there's a part of me that really deeply wants to watch it.
I understand that draw though, because I almost feel like for victims, I feel like I owe it to, like, is that a weird word?
Yeah, that's what
like
I'm saying
owe
about
it to
bearing a
them?
witness. Like, people need to validate. You know, I know what it's like to
You
not
need
feel
to be
that way.
seen.
And to have that support, and to have, you know, because honestly, the only reason I would want to watch it is so that if it ever comes up in conversation online or whatever, I can be like, actually, well, actually, I'm going to be a party ruiner. Put you in your place.
Oh, yeah, that would be a tough one. I don't know if I could do that one.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, listeners? I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. Do you watch those kinds of things? Or listen to those kinds of things, or read those kinds of things, or do you stay the hell away from them? Also, you probably wouldn't listen to this part of the podcast if that's the case.
Well, should we get going?
Yeah, I'm very excited for your person today.
Alrighty. I'm just going to do a little preface. There is some touchy subjects of abuse and torture.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
We're just packing it in today's episode.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into very great lengths, but I'm just going to say this one, her story is a little difficult. Do you know who Ani Pachen is?
Wow, does that sound familiar? But I don't think I know who she is.
She's the Tibetan Warrior Nun.
I don't think I know her.
I didn't either. She was born Pachen Dolma in 1933 in Ganju County. This county was an area in the Kham province of Tibet. Her name Pachen, I think it's Pachen or Pachen, I'm not sure, because I don't know really the dialect of Tibetan words. Her name means big courage. Tibet at the time was broken into 3 provinces. Khan is the smallest one. Her family had status because her father was a powerful chieftain of her tribe. Growing up, she was an only child. And because of this, she was able to learn both of what she would have learned as a son, as well as what she would learn as a daughter. Unlike other girls, taught by her father, she learned how to ride a horse and also to shoot a rifle.
And this is in like, I bet it's like in the 30s, 40s?
1943, probably.
All right.
Up in the Tibetan mountains. I bet that would be pretty fun.
It would be.
Throughout her youth, she said she had a strong pull towards a spiritual life. And so when she says spiritual, she means a calling to follow the Buddhist teachings of the Dalai Lama. Buddhist teachings and practices, in a nutshell, because I looked it up and man, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
I actually have never really dived into what Buddhism is all about, or it's a lot about practices, about discipline, and reaching this enlightenment.
Yes. Mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, finding peace, wisdom, mindfulness, meditation, calmness, absorption, and one of the biggest ones is acceptance. So acceptance of things that, you know, they're not in your control, and being able to let them go, to be able to forgive, which is really hard for humans to do. It's hard for me to do.
Yeah. When I was briefly dabbling in the idea of Buddhism as a young person, I remember being like, oh, I'll be such a good person when I'm done. And like, I just couldn't, it's too hard.
It's too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not built for that.
Yeah. And it's a 24/7 religion.
Yes.
It's everything you do from the moment you wake up, even to when you're sleeping, the energy you put into the universe. My energy is probably so dark.
It's probably like purple. Oh! We just know each other well.
Same wavelength. Her life was going pretty smooth until things shifted abruptly when she was 17. She was going around the house and she overhears her parents talking about her, and they have plans to marry her off to a chieftain from another tribe. And her father knew that he had no other heir, and eventually she was going to inherit his position. So he thought she would, she's just a woman. She's going to need someone to help her. So he thought, what better way? Let's get her married. She'll have a husband, especially from a neighboring clan. We'll join the clans together. And he wanted to just have it kind of tidy like that. She did not want to become someone's wife. Honestly, she said that she witnessed an extremely hard life from her mother of being a wife and a mother. Her mother did not seem very happy.
Happy, yeah.
Yeah. She was 100% against getting married. Her mother, she said, was run ragged by keeping up a home, taking care of her family. And even it seemed like she almost felt like maybe her mother was a little bit disrespected because she was no longer able to have any more children. So her husband just picked up another wife to be able to have more kids. And honestly, the other wife couldn't have any children either. So it kind of sounds like a him problem. Maybe not.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
A her problem.
Yeah, it's a sperm problem.
Her aunt, who was a Buddhist nun, had told her once one is wed, there is no turning back. The path is full of sorrow.
Whoa, that is a dark point of view on marriage.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I would say it's not a piece of cake for some people. And I would feel, especially in that situation of being a wife of the leader of this group, I'm not imagining that she had a whole lot of say or pull or maybe even respect,
I would definitely say that there are times in history that I would have never married.
Yeah. And
it was hard for me to get married, period. I was like, I don't know if I want to be a part of this institution that has historically been not great for people with vulvas.
I had actually planned on never getting married in my early 20s. I was like, no one's going to catch this bird. I just didn't want the responsibility of being a spouse, but that changed, obviously.
I think it is especially difficult for women in heterosexual marriages. Because even if you are in a marriage where you are married to an enlightened man who believes in gender equality and things like that, there are still social and societal pressures from the outside that put those values to the test. And even if you have a male partner who is like 100% all in on, we're going to split the duties of the household. If your kid falls down and hits his knee, who's he going to run to? If your kid is sick, who has to stay home? You know what I mean? Like, you still get burdened with more. If someone's not happy in the household, guess who has to fix that problem?
I also struggled with the idea of getting married because, especially to a man, because I didn't quite know if I was done with my journey of relationships with women. And I felt like if I just kind of like solidified myself in a hetero marriage, that like part of my identity would be gone because people do see me and they're like, oh, she's
straight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have other friends who've been in queer relationships and then go into a hetero relationship, and that there's a whole different difficulty there of like feeling then disconnected from an identity because everybody sees you and makes an assumption about your identity. And I think that's really hard. I had a friend I have two friends actually who only exclusively dated women before they were in long-term partnerships with men.
Oh, wow.
And then suddenly the entire like culture that they had been immersed in was like a vacuum.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Like traitor kind of thing.
Well, some people for sure. But even those who didn't feel that way, your culture changes because like people see you differently. I did have one friend who talked openly about how like some of her former lesbian friends were like, I don't want to know you anymore.
Oh, jeez.
And those people are stupid and closed-minded, and they probably also think trans women aren't women, so I'm going to write those fuckers off.
Well, she did not want this path full of sorrow.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So
If that's what you see in here and that's what your like only cool aunt is telling you.
Your free Buddhist aunt is like, don't do it.
Yeah.
She decides the best way to take care of this is to, what do you think? Run away.
Run away. I was like,
Yeah.
become a nun.
No, she's going to run away. She wants to join a Buddhist monastery, and she wanted to become a nun like her aunt
Yes.
and be dedicated to Buddhism and a life of spiritualism. So she runs away in the middle of the night, only to be caught by one of the servants that was around the house. Not wanting to stay, she told the servant, she's like, I'm going to throw myself off the roof if you don't let me
If you
run
make
out of
me
here.
stay. Oh,
Yeah.
that is so overdramatic.
And the servant was like, the servant was like, no, go ahead, don't do that. So she takes off. Eventually her family notices that she's missing, and her father immediately sends some men to go and find her and bring her back. And you would think that her father just wanted to drag her back home and tell her, you're going to get married. But it actually didn't end up like that. He sent a message with the men that he sent to go find her. He sent the message that said he missed her terribly and that he really just wanted her to come back. He was going to call off the marriage because he just wanted his only child back.
Interesting. Plot twist.
Yes. He not only loved her deeply, but he needed her to be the representative of his tribe. He knew that. So it's like, I feel like, are you going to let her go, like beat her down, hold her down, or are you going to have her be a powerful leader instead?
Mhm.
Like, who do you want representing you? So before she reached the monastery, she was found by her father's men with the message, and she agreed to come back home. After returning home, she spent the next few years of her life immersing herself in Buddhist practices, meditation, and peaceful living. To break up the marriage contract as well, took her father like 4 months to break this contract, just to show like how much he really was dedicated to canceling this marriage. I don't know why it took so long. Maybe there was an exchange
Yeah.
of things.
There must have been some kind of entanglement that was happening.
She did feel a continuous battle between her spiritual journey and the duty as a chieftain's daughter. Both did not go hand in hand, and she felt like she was being tugged in two different directions. The direction that she wanted to follow for her own life, and then her duty as a daughter. Being a passive Buddhist, yet a representative of her clan, she said divided her soul.
That would feel not great.
No, I don't think so. If things couldn't be divided more, at this time, she's 17. In 1950, China invades Tibet.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm going to briefly touch on the occupation of China in Tibet because I feel like most people know what it's about.
Yeah, I would say most people have a vague understanding of it because that's how I feel. Like I know the basics. Thanks, Brad Pitt. I wish I were being facetious, but I'm being real.
You're absolutely real, and I totally agree. So Tibet and China existed side by side with each other for centuries. The bordering line between China and Tibet was very blurry, whereas, some Chinese would settle in Tibetan areas and some Tibetans would settle in Chinese areas. So it wasn't until 1950, under the new established Chinese communist regime, that China decided that Tibet must become a permanent part of the People's Republic of China. So it wasn't going to be just this area that they weaved in and out. They wanted to have control over the entire area. One of the biggest factors was because Tibet had a very valuable border with India, which meant better trade.
I see.
And so if China is on the upper right, Tibet is in the middle, and India is on the lower left. So it's right, direct, straight line through Tibet. The decision to absorb Tibet as part of China was enforced, and the invasion began in the 1950s. For the next few years, Ani Pachen committed herself to train in spiritual practices that would make her a Buddhist nun. During this time, the Chinese occupation and oppression of her people began to change Tibet as she knew. They were slowly moving towards the Khan province where she lived. So they started in the upper part of Tibet and they were moving towards her province, which was on the lower side closer to India. She was able to spend 6 months in the, I'm going to say this wrong, Gyaltse Rinpoche Monastery, where she finished her preliminary religious training and took on the name Ani. So now she's Ani Pachen instead of just Pachen Dolma. And Ani means like nun or sister or auntie. So her name now translates into Nun Big Courage.
That's a cool name.
Yeah.
I like just the idea of being called Big Courage. I want my band to be called Big Courage.
So while she's learning her chieftain duties from her father, she begins sitting in on tribal meetings with him. So not only is she learning how to run her tribe, she's learning how to delegate with other members. She thought she could find balance between her life of peace and as a chieftain's daughter. But once again, everything changed for Ani Pachen. In 1958, her father died suddenly.
Oh, no.
This left the tribe with no leader, and it was time. She needed to step up. So she said in that moment, I knew that my dream of a life devoted to meditation and prayer was no longer possible. I was bound by duty to carry on my father's work. With my country threatened and my family in danger, I set about making a preparation for war.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's an intense, like, I don't know, idea, statement, everything.
Yeah.
Realization.
Yeah, could you imagine of like this dream for yourself and then
you're like, no, I actually have to go to war.
Yeah. So China's hold on Tibet was getting more dangerous. They had forced the Dalai Lama to relinquish government control, and he had to flee Tibet altogether because they were going to murder him. Stories reached her tribe that ancient monasteries had begun to be destroyed. Pacifist monks were forced to kill animals for soldiers' entertainment. Yeah. Because that's absolutely, they cannot harm
Yeah, they
life.
can't harm things.
They
yeah.
would force them to do that.
That is really awful.
In awful ways, too.
Ugh.
Yeah. People who spoke out or fought back were shipped off and imprisoned into labor camps. And this is the worst thing of all. Children were being taken from their parents to be re-educated, in parentheses, in government schools.
They're doing that now.
Yeah.
They're doing that now to the Muslims, the Rohingya Muslims.
One of the biggest tipping points was when a resistance group holed themselves up in a Lithang monastery and refused to comply with the orders for them to turn over their cultural artifacts. The monastery and the entire area was bombed, and 4,000 people were killed.
4,000?
Yeah, they bombed the entire area around the monastery.
Oh my God.
So Ani Pachen chose to lead her people and reluctantly took up her father's mantle. This is what she said about that. I was the only child in the family, and since my father had so much love for his country, I had to carry that on and what he left behind. The task, the struggle against the Chinese. Now, as the head of her tribe, she gathered over 600 people and formed a resistance force. She led them in a rebellion against the invading Chinese. And during this stand, they all lived in the hills, moving back and forth. They are very nomadic people. So it was hard, but it was not what they weren't used to. And they were riding back and forth on their horses. The thing that was a little confusing to me, the CIA jumped in there and like provided a little bit of weaponry and some training for Tibetan rebels. But it's like, why would the CIA want to jump in there?
Oh, the CIA was doing that all over the world.
It's like, fucking stay in your lane.
Yeah, it is very odd, but I mean, like that's how Osama bin Laden, whatever, had weapons.
Jeez.
Because earlier the CIA had supplied the rebels with bombs and guns and shit.
Even though they were supplying weapons and were helping in a way, it only made the Chinese soldiers want to target them even more because they were working with the U.S.
Well, and I would just always remark that anytime you hear about the United States government in any way supplying a resistance or rebel group with weaponry, that is not for their own like goodwill. Mm-hmm. It is because they see some kind of benefit out of it.
There's a stake in the game.
We are a imperialist capitalist country, and China was an imperialist communist country. Mm-hmm. And so they're equally bad. They're equally like, I want to own you and I will fight to own you.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, if they're supplying stuff to rebels in Tibet, it's because they want to be the ones in control, not the Chinese.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with helping them.
The guns that they gave them too, or the weaponry, it was really old
Of course.
stuff. It wasn't
We're going to give you our hand-me-downs.
exactly. Embracing the use of a weapon and violence really wore on her. She seemed to feel things very, very deeply, and going against her teachings really took a toll on her. Even just holding a gun and firing a gun and the thought of having to murder, like to actually kill somebody, to take a life. But she realized that this was a situation that her people were in, and so she had to be in this as well. Despite her efforts fighting for Tibet and its people, Ani Pachen was the only female leader amongst all of the rebelling tribes. And she was looked at with a lot of doubt. She noticed that other rebel leaders would look at her with a mixture of curiosity, disbelief, and dismay on their faces, as if they thought their meetings were no place for a woman. She said it also confused the other side too. The Chinese were like, what is this woman doing leading an army? She said, because I'm a woman, they think I'll hand over my weapons of my people. It's an insult.
Yeah.
Like nobody was taking her serious. I did read there was a time where she was trying to get all the leaders of the rebel groups together for a meeting, and one of them kept not showing up. And so they had to have another meeting, and he didn't show. And they had another meeting, and he finally showed, and he walked in like it was no big deal. And she was like,
Where have you been?
where have you been, fucker? And so she knew that she had to do some kind of display. So she ordered him to be whipped. Yeah. And she said she said when the first whip hit, she felt like herself was being hurt as well. She didn't want to do this.
Yeah, that's not great.
No.
Not great diplomacy.
No. The Tibetan rebels put up their best fight, but were slowly being overtaken, killed, and pushed back towards the border of India. As their numbers dwindled, their fight against the Chinese would eventually fail. And with the threat of being overrun, thousands of Tibetans tried to escape over the Himalayas.
Yeah.
Ani Pachen traveled with her mother, her grandmother, and her aunt, and tried to flee, but they were eventually captured. And it was in 1959, and he was only 25 years old.
Wow, it's like incredible that she's already done what she's done
At 25.
at 25.
In the first few days of being captured, Ani Pachen was interrogated and tortured over and over. This torture would continue for years. She was whipped. She was beaten in the face with a wooden board. She was hung by her wrists and beaten till her shoulders were dislocated. They sleep deprived her. They starved her. And she would start to pass out, and they would like throw ice cold water on her and wake her back up, like not allow her to sleep. And she got so like they beat her face so bad, like her mouth, she couldn't open her mouth.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so after 30 days of this, the women, children, and elderly were released. Ani Pachen had not complied at all or given any information, so they decided to keep her as a prisoner. She said for the first year she was imprisoned, they had shackled her ankles and they didn't remove them once.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how over time that would destroy your bones.
She would spend the next 21 years of her life in prison.
Oh my God.
She was continually tortured, questioned, put into solitary confinement, and forced to live in her own filth. And while in solitary, she continued to practice her Buddhist teachings. She called on Dorji Purba, which is a protector, to help her through her suffering. And she also set a goal for herself. She said that one day she wanted to meet the Dalai Lama. So she spent, all this time in isolation. They put her in solitary for 9 months because they wanted her to renounce her religion, and she wouldn't do it.
My God, 9 months.
She was alone underground.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And she said there she battled with rage, despair, and trying not to let her captors break her from her culture or her religion.
I mean, we can't even fathom what that's like.
21 years of abuse.
I can't fathom even being in solitary confinement for 1 week, let alone
9 months.
9 months. Because I have never experienced anything like that. And I hopefully never will, and I can have empathy about that, but I cannot imagine how that would break down your soul and your spirit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And your physical ability to resist.
And she's a tiny, tiny person too. And I could imagine that she probably broke some bones throughout all of that and just had to sit with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, just being shackled on your ankles nonstop for a year by itself would have degraded your bones in your ankles and the tops of your feet.
After the first few years she was there, one of the guards had befriended her. He was able to sneak her mother into the prison and have the two reunite in secret. Ani Pachen learned that the Chinese had found out that she and her family were tribal leaders. They bribed a Tibetan woman to find her family and poison them. So her mother survived, but her grandmother and her aunt were killed.
Oh my God, that's evil.
Yeah. So she's in secret right now with her mother, and she's like clinging to her mother. She hasn't seen in years. And her mother's all alone now on the outside. And so Ani says she told her mother this: "There will be a time when I get out of prison. I will come find you. And when I do, I will feed you and I will care for you. I will bring you clothes to wear. I will feed you the best food. You will never go hungry again." So her mother had brought some food for her so she wouldn't starve, and she left to go grab it. And while her mother was gone, the guard pulled Ani Pachen away because he had to get her back so that nobody noticed she was gone. After that moment, she never saw her mom again.
No.
Yeah, her mom died on the outside while she was in prison.
I was like, oh, that promise? I don't think you can keep that promise, you know?
So while she was suffering in prison on the inside, Tibet on the outside was also suffering. A huge famine struck the land because they were
withholding all the food.
Withholding food. Tibetan people were being ordered to no longer wear traditional Tibetan clothing. Sacred texts from all over were burned, and ancient monasteries were just being bombed and destroyed.
I hate that kind of stuff.
It's just erasing. It's erasing them.
Yeah, it's, we will, God damn it, we're going to make you assimilate.
Yeah.
By getting rid of anything that connects you to your culture. Americans know how to do that too.
Oh, yeah. Ani Pachen said that she could see smoke clouds rising from the prison, and she just knew another temple was gone. In 1981, tensions between Tibetans and the Chinese slightly eased, and many prisoners of war were released. Ani Pachen was one of them. When she got out, she was 48 years old.
And she went in when she was 25?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
She said, "I went into prison a young woman, and when I came out, I was an old woman."
Well, I wouldn't say 48 is old. Older, that's for sure.
Older. So the Tibet she once knew was no more. Her home was completely destroyed. Everyone she knew was gone. All her family was dead. Her tribe was gone. She went to Lhasa, home to one of the biggest areas of resistance, and there she became an activist. She helped organize some of the first peaceful protests, speaking out against the Chinese occupation she didn't even try to hide it. Mm-hmm. She was just all for it. So they were like, okay, we made a mistake releasing her. So she was seen as a threat. She was able to be tipped off, though, that she was in danger of being rearrested. So not wanting to be imprisoned again, she slipped away and she fled on foot to Nepal. It took her about a month to get to Nepal. And when she finally arrived, she was reunited with other Tibetan people and monks that had made it safely across the border. So there was still people who were still practicing their religion and culture just on the other side.
Yeah, I was I remembered that they went to Nepal.
One of the people that she was able to meet was the Dalai Lama. She didn't even know he was still alive. Like, people in Tibet, they didn't even know he was still there. She would meet with him many times over the rest of her life as she became a global voice in sharing the suffering and atrocities that Tibetan people were enduring. She began to travel the world for the first time in her life, telling people her personal story. And she came to the U.S. and she led several huge marches to raise awareness of what was happening in Tibet. In her personal life, Annie was struggling to heal from the damage that had happened of the 21 years of abuse. She spoke openly about trying to forgive the people that tortured her.
I don't know how you could do that.
I don't either.
I mean, we were at the top of the show talking about people who have abused folks, and I know that for a lot of people, forgiveness is necessary in order to move forward. But I also think there's an amount to forgiveness that also requires you to, I don't know, be okay with the things that happened to you that someone perpetuated against you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not there yet. I'm still not there yet.
Me neither. I have a wall.
I also am more forgiving of the person who actually perpetuated the abuse than I am of the people around that allowed it to happen and decided not to believe me, or at least pretend not to believe me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can imagine, like, you might be able to forgive the people who actually tortured you, but everyone around who allowed that to happen, probably that would be even harder, because it's like, you didn't lift that actual piece of, wood against me, but you watched as it happened.
Yeah. And did nothing.
And
You made it okay. She said, "Sometimes I felt such anger for the Chinese. My life, like so many others, passed in suffering. His Holiness said that we must not hate the Chinese. Even after my time in," she says, the caves, she went and did meditation in these caves to try to heal herself. And she did like a little bit of private isolating to meditate. But she said, "I still struggle with anger." She said she would get to a point where she felt very like relaxed and was able to like process, but then just all this rage would come back.
Yeah.
What happened to not only her, but to her people, her culture, her home, her land.
Yeah, trauma and PTSD, man, it's not easy to overcome. And I wouldn't, and especially that kind. And for so long, prolonged for so long. Like, nope. I don't know how you would ever get over that. Truly.
Part of her healing came with putting it all on paper. She wrote an autobiography titled Sorrow Mountain, The Journey of a Tibetan Warrior Nun. There, she put down all of her experiences, and she credits her survival to her Buddhist practices and meditation. Something she never let her captors break from her. So the book is, I didn't read all of it. I just got some excerpts from it. It is a really awesome book. Just her detailed life of where she started with her father to how she went into warfare, into her practices of like getting out of that darkness after her torture. And she really does go into what happened to her. Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, I don't know if I could read that.
Yeah. Another one that will
Yeah, thank you for the Cliff's Notes version and not the detailed one, because I don't know if I could do that.
Ani Pachen eventually settled in a nunnery in Dharamsala, India. There, she could be close to the Dalai Lama and to the Tibetan government, who was in exile. Her lifetime of resistance still resonates and inspires the people of Tibet to this day, a Tibet that is still under oppression and waiting for liberation. Ani Pachen died peacefully in 2002 at the age of 69.
That's so young still, though.
Yeah, very young.
I mean, but I imagine that her body had been through so much in those years that she was in prison.
And I'll leave you with a quote from the end of her book. "As for me, the story will go like this. She led her people to fight against the Chinese. She was present at the protests of Lhasa. She worked to save the ancient spiritual teachings. When I die, just my story is left." So just a nice, clean break. I kind of like that of just...
When I die, just my story will be
Just my
left.
story.
It's a lot. That's intense. Like, and what's wild is the majority of her life was spent in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the majority of her adult life, she was spent in a prison. So, like, her memoir is going to be mostly about
being in prison.
being in prison.
Yeah.
And yeah, wow. That's intense.
And Tibet is currently still occupied, still under oppression. I was reading some local up-to-date news, and like even this past Sunday, some Tibetans are still practicing of committing suicide in a form of protest. And a 18 and 19-year-old, 2 boys, just did that on Sunday. And there was an incident that happened on this past Wednesday where apparently their digital correspondences are supposed to be monitored by the Chinese government. And you're supposed to have like a moderator that watches all of this. And this group of young people started a group chat and didn't register the conversation. And so they were punished. One of the young men was beaten and they broke both of his legs.
Oh my God.
So it's still happening.
Yeah, it's still pretty horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that one of the downfalls that we have in our current news cycle is we get very caught up in like one thing, and that's the only thing we think about or read about. And I remember when Free Tibet was the cause du jour of the glitterati, you know, all of the famous celebrities, Beck, Brad Pitt, like everybody was wearing like Free Tibet shirts, and they had a Free Tibet concert.
Oh yeah. But then like what happened after that?
Yeah,
you can raise the money, but it you need to fight for political change.
you can't do it for like a minute and then be like, gosh, that was really good, guys. Nice job. And then walk away. Like, yeah.
I had remembered that when it was that fad.
Yeah.
And so going back and like reading this, and like there is a website called freetibet.org. And just like all the, like the news was of this week.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Oh my God, I had no idea.
I'm sure that some of those celebrities still give them money to try to do something. But we all know that you can throw money at a problem, but until you get the people who are in power involved. And there was a pretty concerted effort to get U.S. officials to be involved. But the thing is the U.S. will never go directly up against China as long as they are an economic power. They just won't.
It's just a fact.
Because there's too much entanglement there economically. We depend on them, they depend on us, and we just turn a blind eye to all the terrible things they're doing, including currently the, mass murder and imprisonment in concentration camps of Rohingya Muslims. Like, that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And we're doing jack shit about it.
Well, if anybody's out there and they want to see information about like maybe something that they can contribute or just information, period, freetibet.org does have a lot of resources on there, and they have daily articles. Ani Pachen's book, Sorrow Mountain, The Journey of a Tibetan Warrior Nun, is available on Amazon. And it's also in the downtown Spokane library if you have a library card and want to read it. I also got some info from a New York Times article written by Douglas Martin called Ani Pachen Warrior Nun in Tibet Jail for 21 years. Jason Porath wrote a Rejected Princesses about her. And I found a new source that was really nice. It's by Naomi Wilcox Lee, and her website is called Sheroes of History. So a little similar to what we do here. And so, yeah, go check out Naomi's website. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
All right.
Thank you for sharing her story. And can you tell me how to spell her name?
Ani is A-N-I,
Okay.
and Pachen is P-A-C-H-E-N.
Okay. Very cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I find it very honorable and like almost beautiful that she was able to hold on to who she was.
Yeah.
Even though somebody literally was trying to beat it out of her.
Yeah, she was being tortured to change and didn't. That's impressive. Just the mental and physical fortitude, spiritual fortitude to be able to stand up to that for so long. And I would not blame anybody who didn't.
Yeah.
who renounced everything just to survive and go forward.
Yeah. And be okay. Yeah, she's a very, very incredible person.
She was. Before we go, I do have to make 2 corrections about my Belva Ann Lockwood from last week.
That's right.
One was that I don't know what was happening, if I had some kind of brain fart or what, but I said she died in 1978. Which is wild that neither of us caught that at the time, but she died in 1917.
1978. That's a long, healthy life.
Yeah. She definitely would have been like 170 years old or something ridiculous like that. Anyway, also I said at the end, I was talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg having written the foreword to that book about her. Mm-hmm. And I said at the end that, Ruth Bader Ginsburg made the comment about there being only one woman on the Supreme Court. And I said, it's not, we have more than one now, so it's not the same as when she was speaking. And I said, there's only 2, but I was forgetting that Amy Coney Barrett was sworn in, a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And I think I just chose to block that from my mind.
I did too. I was like, oh yeah.
Why her? Why? Why is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's replacement? So yeah, apologies for that. I do know that there are 3. I just chose not to believe that she existed for the moment.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
So anyway, sorry for that. Correction. There you go. I also said at one point that they wouldn't vote for this guy. And I was like, no, I meant that they wouldn't endorse him because they were not allowed to vote.
It's hard sometimes. We have all of our stuff all lined out and then we just get a little flustered sometimes.
Well, and I'm like talking really fast. Often when I have a long one like that one, I'm like talking so fast that things start coming out of my mouth that are incorrect. Anyway, thank you for putting up with us. Thank you to Lucas as well for being our amazing editor.
And thank you to Jennifer Finch for providing our badass theme music.
And of course, we want to thank you all for listening to us and continuing to recommend us to your friends and loved ones, and for supporting us on Patreon and TeePublic. If you haven't done so and you're interested in doing that, please head over to those areas and support us.
And a little word to the Patreon people who have t-shirts coming to them right at this moment. They are being inked.
Woo, woo, woo. And then you're going to get your pin, your sticker, your
gonna
t-shirt.
Get your shit.
And then we want to see all of you sporting that stuff. Take photos, tag us on Instagram. We really want to see it out into the world.
Alrighty, till next time.
Thank you, everyone.